What's going on, YouTube? We're back at it for another video, and today we've got a solo tips guide. We're effectively going to be breaking down some of my solo gameplay footage, giving you some of those tips and tricks on how to survive through Helldive difficulty, and more specifically on the Automaton side of things. There's a lot of things that can be really daunting about Helldive difficulty, and even more so when it comes to facing off with the Automatons. You may have already seen those rocket devastators, and they are quite devastating. Now, even if you aren't a solo player, these are tips that could benefit you even in group play, and trust me, it can help you a lot when it comes to playing with randoms, as playing with randoms can be very interesting in both a good and bad way. But fear not, we're going to give you some of those tips inside of this video to basically give you the capability of either teaching some of these randoms or being able to counter some of those bad interesting points of some of those randoms that could make for some instances of overwhelming odds to deal with, and how to be able to get away from those odds and make sure that you have the capability of surviving and carrying some of those teams, if not just carrying yourself to victory. Now, we've got a lot of things to cover, but the first thing that I need to talk about when it comes to the tips, especially when it comes to solo play, is the things you want to look for when it comes to facing off with the Automatons, as not all missions are going to be something that you would like to face off when it comes to solo play. Some are going to be easier than others, and some may just be a bit longer and more tedious, so let's talk about which ones you should be looking for when it comes to certain missions that will be favorable for a solo play. Now, if you're somebody that isn't interested in the solo category, then skip right ahead to the next timestamp where we get into gameplay footage. I believe that'll be what I've named it. And when it comes to the missions you'll be looking for if you are playing solo when it comes to facing off with the Automatons, Blitz missions, ICBM, and Sabotage Airbase are probably one of your more ideal groups to actually look for. Each one of these can easily be done by one person, and they are basically a step-by-step process, including even more so with the Blitz mission and the Sabotage Airbase. Coming in with even just as simple as an Eagle airstrike is all you really need for both of these missions, alongside a railgun, and you can swiftly clear through these very easily. A mission that I would choose to avoid if I were in solo play would be retrieve valuable data, as this is going to leave us in the instance, or we will be stuck in the instance of having to drag 2 hard drives to another location. As you'll notice in the map just above my head right now, we've got 2 different hard drives we'll have to grab, and then on the complete opposite side of the map we'll have to one by one take each one of these over to that base and then lock those in. By all means, you can get this done, but it is really one of those moments where it just feels counterintuitive when it comes to your overall time management. In general, you'd much rather have something along the lines of emergency evacuation, where it's quite simply just go into one objective, go to the other objective, and then hit the final objective, and then be able to get out. Not go to the objective, go to the main objective, go back to the other objective, go to the main objective, go to the other objective, go back to the main objective. Bit of a headache. You see how that ends up being one of those instances where you're kind of taking a lot of time for no reason, when it would be just much better for group play instances. Beyond that, another one that I would say isn't exactly the most solo friendly is going to be conduct geological survey, as each one of these locations, as soon as you start up that objective, you will be faced with bot drops, which ideally as a solo player you do want to kind of avoid bot drops, or at least avoid bot drops in the instance where you are stuck at a location where you're going to have to deal with the massive amounts of forces that will be coming down on top of you while you're trying to complete that objective. It can be extremely frustrating, it can be really hard to deal with in certain instances, and especially even more so with something like conduct geological survey, as if you're not capable of completely clearing the board every time these bots come in, it can make getting these objectives complete really irritating. And at that same point, you may find yourself stuck in one of those moments where you're constantly getting churned through reinforcements, dropped straight back into the action without having the capability of a teammate to throw you off in the distance away from all of the hot spots that have been dropped in for all these enemies from the bot drops themselves. And at that point, you may find yourself just kind of gritting your teeth and really not having a good time. So I'd say you can get conduct geological survey done, but it's going to be one of the more irritating of the missions if you're a solo player. But that being said, we're going to jump straight into the gameplay now. We've got more than a few things to cover, so let's get started. Now we're going to be jumping into the Sabotage Airbase mission. This one is pretty simple. More than likely, any solo is going to be able to just blitz through this one pretty easily. Now, the first thing that we're going to go for, though, is going to be the Destroy Airbase Control Tower, as this one's going to be the harder objective out of the three. The other two, we will effectively be able to just utilize something like the Eagle Airstrike, the Orbital Laser, or grenades, or even just the Railgun in order to take out those objectives. But now, when it comes down to where should you drop, obviously one of the better locations to drop at is one of the first objectives you'd like to go for, and try to find one of the minimal enemy presence locations around it. I generally find bodies of water and the coastline around them are going to be the best locations, as 9 times out of 10 there won't be a patrol or enemies just around it, and you can just drop in and be able to immediately go prone and start calling in some of your stratagems, no problems whatsoever. Now, the loadout that we're going to be working with for this mission is going to be Eagle Airstrike, the Orbital Laser, the Railgun, and I've been running the Jump Pack quite often. I've had a good bit of fun with it. It increases my overall mobility and gives me a few capabilities that I wouldn't have otherwise when it comes to trying to flank enemies, getting over things, getting out of the line of fire, and sometimes giving me the opportunity to provide a little overwatch. But now we're going to be dropping in straight away here, and as soon as we land on that beach, we're going to immediately go prone. This is just in case there's any enemies nearby and we don't want to have that moment where we're calling things in, we've got bot drop going off, or possibly one of those bug breaches going on. So in this instance, we immediately go prone, start checking our radar, seeing where the enemies are near us, and we want to make sure we get a little bit of a distance away from some of those red dots, and then we'll be able to start calling in some of those stratagems to get our railgun and our backpack. Now, all the while, you want to make sure that you're constantly looking at your radar, making sure that you're not alerting some enemies or on the lookout for patrols that may be coming your way. Those are going to be one of the biggest hang-ups that you may end up having, and you may have noticed this in multiple matches before this, because running into a patrol almost guarantees that you'll either have that bug breach or that bot drop. The only way to stop the bot drop from happening is taking out the one humanoid bot that could be popping up the flare, but sometimes it's not always going to be as easy as you'd like it to be, as there could be a range of different enemies with ranged weapons that may stop you from having that capability of taking them out before that flare goes up. And if you're stuck in between a lot of different bases, you could end up pushed into some of those other bases, more bot drops coming down on top of that, more enemies just stacking all over you, and it can get really out of hand really quickly. But that being said, a lot of times using that radar is going to be your best bet at avoiding those situations. But now we've made it over to the air traffic, or the air base control tower. I'm able to throw in the orbital laser to kind of clear out the enemies on top, and with that jump pack, we're able to utilize that mobility to basically cut in line and get straight to that terminal up top. Now, we've called in the SSD, and it does seem a little bit weird. There was a lot less enemies than there normally is here. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. Between each match, it's going to differ, and depending on whether you're one player or solo compared to 4 players, the enemy density can be quite different between each match. But from that point, you'll notice we also have a little bit of a humanoid bot coming up. It's always a good rule of thumb to constantly be checking that radar, making sure that you know when enemies are pushing you, where they're pushing you from. This can be even better in situations where if you can see them at a distance coming from a certain angle, you'll be able to preemptively strike with some of those stratagems, have those ready, especially when you've got some of those modifiers that increase the overall call-in time by 100%. Those moments when you can kind of see where the enemies are coming from and predict where they're going to be funneling into, you can throw down that stratagem and be able to time that properly in that instance to get the most effect out of that stratagem. Now we've destroyed that airbase control tower, and we're just going to quickly start heading to the next objective. One of the biggest things is time is not just something that further increases the overall experience gained by the end of the game. It also is a factor at how much you will be dealing with as you progress through the match. The longer you're in the match, the more enemy presence is going to be available. The more dense it, or the enemy density, will just further increase as you go on, and it will get progressively more and more aggressive with how many enemies it will be dishing out to you and what type of enemies you will be getting. It will get extremely dangerous fairly quickly, and there are instances where you may find yourself in a situation where it's just bot drop after bot drop after bot drop, and it's almost like it just never ends. But from this position, we've noticed, or while utilizing that radar, I was able to see that there was a bunch of humanoid bots over on our left, and I made sure to clearly avoid them. We just went straight to our right, and right in front of us, we've got one of those stratagem jammers. We're going to need to take this out, as it may be affecting us later on down the road with dealing with the other 2 objectives. Sometimes you may find yourself in a situation, especially on missions like this, where there's something like the mortar emplacements or the anti-aircraft emplacements can be really painful. You are going to want to head over to those locations and be able to take those out fairly quickly. And generally, I would say with an Eagle airstrike, but when it comes down to the anti-aircraft ones, this is the great thing about throwing in something like orbital laser into your stratagem loadout. It can be used in those instances to quickly take that out and then move to that next objective. Now, when it comes to stratagem jammers, if you find one that ends up having one of those fabricators directly connected to it just at that top floor, if you can land a grenade inside of that fabricator, you can instantly take out that stratagem jammer. Now, it's not always going to have that type of layout where it's going to have that fabricator up at the top. Sometimes they'll be on the second floor and not directly connected, so you will have to go up and interface with that terminal in order to get it taken down, so that way you can start using your stratagems. I wouldn't say that you necessarily every time have to go for tossing the hell bomb on that and blowing it up. By all means, it's one of those moments where you can interface with that terminal, as you'll notice, and just get out of dodge. But you'll notice we've got a bot drop that just happened from us taking out that stratagem jammer, which actually ends up helping us out in certain instances. It's not a bad idea as you're moving from objective to objective, possibly tagging a few enemies along the road, getting them to pop off a flare. That way you've got a bot drop happening in the rear view mirror and you don't have to deal with that. And when it comes to the next location that you may be going to, where you may end up having one of those situations where you can almost guarantee there might be an enemy that's going to pop off a flare, they're not going to be able to do it because the game's logic is already spawning in that bot drop behind you, and you'll have a cooldown timer before the next bot drop can be possible, and you won't have to deal with all the problems. Now, we just headed over to the next objective, and I was kind of surveying the land right there and then strategically placed one of those Eagle airstrikes to not only hit the fabricator in the middle, but both of the ships. It's a good rule of thumb to come up to these and play it stealthily, as sometimes there will be a massive amounts of these ships that you'll need to take out. Could be a massive base. I got lucky with this mission to where that one only had 2 drop ships that I needed to take out right there. And then coming over to this next location after we already dropped that back there, completely evading those enemies and just moving on to that next objective and immediately going prone to check out this base. Now, what I'm doing right here is making sure that I don't alert any enemies or have another bot drop happening, but at the same time, I'm surveying where all the locations of some of these ships might be, seeing where is going to be the best location for me to drop in one of those Eagle airstrikes and take out as many as possible, if not all of them in one fell swoop. And one thing to keep in mind is whether or not you get all of them or you have a base that has a multitude of these ships, you can take them out with grenades and your railgun if you don't have those stratagems available at that time. So don't even worry about those type of situations. You may be able to just clear it up pretty quickly, even if that first Eagle airstrike doesn't get all of them in one fell swoop. Get the grenades out, get the railgun out, finish it off quickly, and then get out of dodge. Now, from this point, technically, we've already completed the main objective. We don't even need to extract right now. This is one of those moments where if you're a solo player and you're looking to get a bit more experience out of this run, or possibly just a bit more fun out of it, you want to test your capabilities at taking out the automatons themselves, or dealing with a lot of the different situations that may be lying around, such as those side objectives of mortar emplacements, anti-aircraft, taking out all the bases. This is that time you can get that done. Now, we're going to immediately just go for an extract on this one, as I've got a 100% increase to the call-in time, so I know my extract is going to take 4 minutes by the time we get over here. Now, as I'm moving through, you'll notice we're still constantly checking out that radar, seeing what we have available. One good thing to pick up on is if you find a radar station, that's going to be one of those objectives or side objectives that you really want to go for, as it'll basically mark everything on the map. So you'll know whether or not you're dealing with stratagem jammers, you're dealing with anti-aircraft or mortar emplacements, and it'll show all those locations for you. Now, we're over at the extract location, but it is occupied by the enemy forces right now, so there's a couple of fabricators here. We're effectively going to have to deal with some type of enemy presence over here, and it may end up calling in a bot drop. Now, a good rule of thumb, if you do pass by the extract location and you have a location that ends up having the enemy presence at the early portion of the game, it's not a bad idea to toss some stratagems in here and clear this out before the end of the match. That way you can kind of avoid that scenario of having to deal with this enemy presence and possibly having a further increased enemy presence based on how long you've been in the match, and then the capability of just having an onslaught of bot drops that just keep coming in and then calling in the extract and having even more enemy presence. Sometimes this can mean make or break a team at the very end of it, especially since you're stuck at this location, and even more so when you have that instance of 100% increase to call-in time modifier. Having 4 minutes to survive at this location can be it can be a rough one on Helldive difficulty with how many enemies can end up spawning in with this. Now, I got this bright idea to possibly try and test out whether or not I could utilize the jump pack to just jump up to the location of the device to call in the extract, and I started to move over to the left, and then, thankfully, I checked the radar, and there was a massive patrol coming around that left side, and then I'm now just going to move counterclockwise from their position to get myself on the opposite side and be able to avoid that patrol coming in, and then be able to jump up to the extract device. Now, crazy enough, there have been times where I have been able to extract from a Helldive difficulty, and utilizing stealth, I can completely avoid all enemies for the entire 4 minutes. We'll have a little bit of that happen towards the end of this, but sadly enough, my harebrained scheme of hoping that I could call in this shuttle without getting alerted, I kind of messed it up. I think I threw myself into, I threw a wrench into the plan, I'm pretty sure, but we'll see that here coming up shortly. But there are times where, especially with something like the jump pack, if you've noticed, there's some of those little rock structures next to some of these extract locations. If you can jump up on top of that and then just literally sit there prone after you call in the extract, you'll be able to actually watch a plethora of enemies start storming in, not see anything, not get alerted, they won't notice you're even there, and then they'll kind of look around, move around, and then eventually just vacate the vicinity. And it's super easy. You can just kind of watch them and see what they do, and then be able to just jump pack off of that onto the ship. It's a smooth experience. I've been having a fantastic time with this jump pack. I mean, this is my new favorite backpack. I need to make a backpack tier list, because some of these backpacks are really good. There's only, I think, 2 of them that are basically useless, but overall, we were able to take out that one humanoid bot on that turret stealthily. Now, this can only be done stealthily if no enemy is watching that enemy. I got lucky there. If some other humanoid bot was watching that guy on the turret and watching him get taken out, that would have been problematic for me. Now, the crazy part is I didn't actually need the jump pack in order to get up on top to the extract device to call it in. I tried from a rock over here, fell short. There's a lot of moments where you utilize this jetpack and doesn't always want to grab onto that ledge, or it doesn't go high enough. But over here on this right side, I was actually able to just walk up, climb up to this little rock face over here, and make it all the way up and avoid all the enemy presence immediately. You know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go prone there. He almost caught on to me right there, and I immediately just dove over to the left. But this humanoid bot, I immediately pull up that radar, check out what he's doing, and then he just goes straight back to whatever else he was doing. So that way, now, they're not alerted, they don't know what's going on, they're not going to be investigating, and we'll be able to just immediately call in that extract. But one thing that I did beforehand was make sure that I had a resupply. I basically set myself up with a situation where if this does end up calling a bot drop, or if things do go in a different direction, I've got some capability of maintaining my overall survivability. Now, you'll notice on the radar, we've got a few red dots starting to come in like every single time. See, I immediately, I was able to stop that flare going off, and then I messed up, and I'm pretty sure I would have been fine had I just sat there and not thrown the orbital laser, because right after that, boom, as soon as I threw that orbital laser, there was another flare that just went off right there, and this almost got really bad. Be sure to be looking at the skies as to where these bot drops are going to land, because I had no idea. Just above me, not only is there this one ship right here, but there's also a secondary ship dropping in a tank right on top of me. That could have easily been the only death I had this match, and I got a close call right there with another one of those mines. Still had the grenade out. I mean, everything could have gone wrong at this very last moment, and thankfully it did not. But now we're going to head back up and we're going to take out that tank, and if you don't know with the Scorcher, you can actually end up taking out these heavily armored tanks by shooting them in the weak spot on the back of them with a full magazine. Now, it has to be the full 15 rounds in order to take down that armored tank, but that can be pretty useful, and it definitely makes that Scorcher a whole lot more worth it when it comes to grinding out those war bonds. Now, it was a little bit weird how that tank just kind of sat there like that. I think it pressed over to try and get an angle on me instead of following me all the way down. It may have been one of those moments where I think it actually got stuck on that turret over there on the left. It couldn't actually destroy it. But in this instance, this is where things just get super easy. I was able to just literally go prone. You can see that there's some red dots coming over to my location, and it seems as though things are going to go wrong. But this is that moment that I was talking about, where if you can kind of get up on one of those rock locations, and in this instance, I was able to just take out enough enemies to the point where I was able to just go prone on the landing pad itself and be able to stealthily evade the enemies. They would come over, they'd come somewhere near my location. It almost seems like they have like a proximity radar in a way where they'll go over to the location where in general you should be, but they won't necessarily go all the way up to the very top floor where you're at. There may be some problem with the logic on the code on that one, but overall this may be a way to kind of avoid contact in this situation and be able to just literally lay up here and then wait out the entire timer. You'll notice all those red dots are now just moving in the opposite direction. They came over, they lost interest, they lost the scent of me, and now I can just literally lay here, have no worries. And because we finished this so early on, I think that's why the bot drop didn't end up dropping more in, and we were actually able to just eliminate it very quickly. A lot of times when it comes to consistent bot drops, that generally happens because you're not able to take out all the enemies, especially if you leave some of those humanoid bots in there. After the bot drops have concluded, you may end up getting even more because there'll just be more enemies available to pop off another flare, and then rinse and repeat. You've got a whole nother cycle of some of those bot drops coming in right after that, and it just gets to be really punishing if you're not able to fully clear that board. But when you do, that's when you have those moments of just clear skies like right now, being able to breathe easy and just get your objective done with no issues whatsoever. But that's going to be it right there, guys. That's going to be the last 12 seconds right here. We have finished out this match, and hopefully this has given you some tips that are pretty helpful. It's hard to basically give every tip possible in just one video, and every one of them that could be beneficial for your future dives. But if this is something that you like, let me know down in the comments below. I can certainly pump out some more content like this, talking about some of the other missions at Helldive difficulty, giving a little bit of a breakdown on it, and giving those tips and tricks to kind of help people out and give you a hands-on experience as things are going, instead of just having a 10-minute video that just has small segments of little bits of information that may help you. Sometimes it's just easier for me to make this. It's how my brain works. I don't know. It's a strange way that I get it done. Sometimes I just kind of like making a narrative along with the tip video, and it makes it a bit more enjoyable, in my opinion, not only for myself, but hopefully for you as well. And I'd like to, think that it does. Let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, some people may just be, sleeping by this point, and who knows, that's how they finish the video, but who knows. But if you'd like to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to see some of this content live, hit that link down in the description below. Follow me over at Twitch. We've got plenty more things to come. And on that note, have a good one.